Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to have a very insightful interview with somebody who I've followed for a number of years now, who has been really, I think, on the cutting edge of a number of different areas, particularly agorism, using technology to protect our privacy, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Welcome to the show, Amir Taaki. How are you doing?
Welcome. Love to be here with you. I've been reading your book on agorism. So very excited to have this meeting of minds and discuss strategy and also with the audience. I think we're in a very important time where we need to rally and mobilize, but we can't be too complacent because there's a window of opportunity. So,
Absolutely.
It's not a matter of just waiting, but it's also building our forces. And when it presents, we're ready to go in and seize that. So that's why I'm excited to be here, because I feel, your audience, you're onto something very powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And so for those who don't know, we don't have to go through your background. I think you've got a lot of really interesting things that you've done in your life, from, fighting in the Syrian Civil War. We can talk about that a bit later, to obviously being an early coder in the Bitcoin community. I'll just share with you that one of the first ways that I heard about you was, I think, back in 2012, maybe 2013. I was in Austin, Texas, at this bookstore that no longer exists, Brave New Books, and I was interviewing Cody Wilson about the Dark Wallet project and about obviously Defense Distributed and things like that. And I know that you and Cody had worked together at one point. So that's when I first was introduced to some of your work, and then obviously the focus on anonymity and privacy. And that's something that, as an agorist, as somebody who is really trying to be outside of the state, has always excited me. But before we get into some of these bigger pictures, maybe you could share, you don't necessarily have to do your whole bio, you can share whatever you like, but what I'm more interested in is what have been your inspirations, from the beginning, philosophically, strategically, whatever it is, that sort of set you on the path that you're on now.
I mean, when I was a teenager, I was reading about the struggles of history. So history, we all start out when we're young, and we start looking into what happens, and so that was a big one there. A really big one was free software and Linux when I was 15, 16, and I discovered that entire world, that there was a global network building the future of technology. And I found out about that, and I said, I want to be a part of that. And I went into that, and that became my life. And I went into that, and I met a lot of people. I fell in with a bad crowd, the anarchists, and we were working on free software in Europe with the hackers. And I did that for many years. I was heavily influenced by those people, the free software, anarchist European hackers. Also, I was involved in, various movements. Like, I was involved in the Catalan movement with the cooperatives, which was like a kind of agorist project. That's also there's a lot of interesting lessons that I learned there, stepping up my work from, being a kind of anarchist to being part of this more organized group of people trying to build something bigger. Then after that, I was working on, cryptocurrency, etc. After I went to Syria, I was part of the movement there of the PKK, of the Kurdish resistance, the ones that were fighting against ISIS. I learned a lot from that movement. That had a huge effect on me, and I realized, what it is that we need to do and what we're doing wrong, as libertarians, as agorists, anarchists, etc. So those have been the big influences, coming up to this period.
Yeah, and I'd love to get more into the Syrian aspect in a bit because it's so interesting to me, and I think that there's very few people who have direct experience. Not only fighting in conflicts, not necessarily to glorify that or anything, but like you said, to gain lessons directly from that and how we can organize our movements. So the reason I originally reached out to you, I mean, for one, we're going to both be speaking in Mexico City next month at Monerotopia. I'm really excited to just hang out a little bit in person, and I'm hoping we can get you to come back to Mexico in January for our event, the People's Reset. But as I said, I've just come across your work throughout the years and seen that from the tech side, I'm not a technologist, I'm not a coder, not a software developer, software engineer. So that's not my strength. My strength has been kind of taking the philosophical concepts and trying to push them out there as much as possible, as well as actually living the agorist, counter-economist lifestyle, trying to focus on building parallel systems. And of course, when you're going down that road, you find cryptocurrency. At least I did. I started to kind of wake up to these ideas in 2009. I first heard about Samuel Konkin and agorism, I think, in 2011. And I was already not talking to government agencies and not using banks and going down that road. And then I heard about agorism and using alternative currencies, and of course discovered Bitcoin. I started reporting on Bitcoin as an independent journalist at the Texas Bitcoin Conference back in 2012, and it was just very much there in the kind of early days. And I could see right away that there was this apparent divide between those who were like, we need Bitcoin to go mainstream, we need mainstream acceptance and adoption and regulation, and then those who understood it as a tool to try to combat the Federal Reserve and the central banking system. I think it's obvious that that's the side of things that you're on as well as I am. But let's speak to that for a moment. I mean, you were also featured in this new HBO documentary, Money Electric, which really tries to focus on who is Satoshi. And I think we both agree that the answer to that question is maybe not as important as they make it. But that there are some concerning elements that were brought up in the documentary that you spoke about and that I've written about. And that is sort of the co-opting or the hijacking of Bitcoin. And I want to speak to that just for a moment before we get into the deeper issues of agorism. There's two people that really are focused on in the documentary, Adam Back, and of course his connection to Blockstream. I've talked about this for my audience. You guys will remember that Blockstream is the company that has connections to the Bilderberg Group through Henry de Castries from AXA Strategic Ventures chairman. And then we have Peter Todd with some leaked emails alleging, connections to intelligence. What are your thoughts on those two men? Not specifically about is one of them Satoshi, but do you think there are legitimate concerns as far as the project having been co-opted, or was it infiltrated from the beginning? As far as the whole block wars, we don't have to get too much into the weeds of it, but just your general viewpoint on, and maybe elaborate on some of what you expressed in that documentary about those two individuals.
I mean, it's so, You're fine. I mean, it's so ridiculous because I have been telling people for a long time that Peter Todd is an agent, and I have like a write-up. His emails were leaked. I've given people all the evidence, and he still gets invited to conferences. He's still this known agent, and people are just like, oh yeah, well, And then finally, when there's a documentary where it's actually laying forward the evidence, then people are like, oh my God, Peter Todd's an agent. I was like, come on, guys. I've been telling you this for ages. It needs so-called libertarians, anarchists. They need a HBO documentary to tell them the facts before they accept that this is true. So it's just people are completely colonized mentally. And that's why this corruption has been allowed to enter into cryptocurrency, is because people have a very slave-like mindset. And that's like where it really happens, not from the agents that they send in, but from the people who want to be close to power, want to be close to wealth. I mean, look at Twitter. Twitter's a really good example. Twitter's owned by Elon Musk, and everybody has to suck off Elon Musk now, because if you do that, you get boosted. That's like the truth of it. That's why everyone's going, oh, Elon Musk, he's a great guy. And then, if he replies to them, then they put a screenshot on there and they go, oh, the best day of my life, with stars in their eyes. That's the sad reality of how people operate, so-called freedom fighters. Peter Todd is a known agent. I mean, it's like known. It's like the evidence is there. And it's shocking for me. And, he tries to, if you ask him about it, you see him in a documentary where he's confronted with the evidence and he says, oh, yeah, well, it's just a guy. He could be anybody. but that's like half the truth, because the guy approached him, said, I want to stop Amir Taaki, that's me by the way, from receiving money, which we were broke open source developers. We had no money. We were completely broke. Peter Todd is meant to be our friend. He's meant to be our friend. And somebody approaches him, tells him, I'm an agent and I want you to help me stop Amir getting money. And here's how we're going to do it. You need to send money to me, and then I will use that to sign a message, blah, blah. There's like a sequence of actions, like a conspiracy that they actually carried out. They didn't just talk about it. Peter Todd sent money to this agent to sign that message, to stop us getting funding while pretending to be our friend. Do people not see how ridiculous that is? And then he just goes, oh, it could be anybody. Anybody can self-fight. Okay, fine. But you actually helped someone. You actually carried out actions to stop your friends receiving money on behalf of an agent. If that's not corrupt, if that's not agent behavior, if he's not, I don't know what is. That's not conspiracy. That's like literally in the HBO documentary as facts. That's like factual event that happened. And
it seems like you're saying it went even deeper than that, than what they showed, right, on the documentary. Like they showed just kind of a brief email.
Yeah, they just showed, there was an agent that contacted him and said some stuff with him, and then he goes, it could be anybody. They're calling themselves an agent, but I don't know that. But look, if somebody contacts you as an agent, you can find these emails online. They're all public, and they say, hey, I want you to help me undermine your friend to stop them getting money. Would you entertain them? Would you entertain a cop going, okay, let's see what this guy's about? No, you're telling him to fuck off. So I don't know why this Fed is like going around to Bitcoin conferences as a key opinion leader, being invited as like a king of Bitcoin, now being named as the creator of Bitcoin. There's some agenda going on. And you know why? They literally want to take over Bitcoin because Bitcoin's a threat to their power. They want to undermine it because that's like one of the key things. Like the US, their basis of power is being a global financial empire. And the only thing that threatens that is a sovereign monetary system that they can't control. They've infiltrated and found every opportunity to undermine and to suppress Bitcoin from reaching its true power.
Absolutely. Now, for those who haven't seen the documentary Money Electric, I highly encourage you to torrent it, to download it. Don't give HBO your money. If you want to learn more about what we're discussing here. And in there, Amir, you were one of the early coders, and they show how there was a period of time, you kind of mentioned this, where you guys went into a squat, some of the developers and coders, including Peter Todd, and were working together. Do you regret working with him?
I mean, hindsight's 2020. It's like going, do you regret working with a guy that you now know was a secret agent? Like,
did you have any hint that that he was ashamed? Like people say he's got an obvious ego, and some people can just have ego issues, and that's a whole nother thing. But that's a big step, I guess, from working with an agent.
Before crypto, he used to manufacture gyroscopes in the military. So.
Yeah, I saw you say that. And then it seems like there's some of his history that's kind of hard to find, like about his past. So he could have been recruited at a very young age if he was, as, kind of as a prodigy as they try to make him out to be in the documentary. So, I know we can't prove any of that, but I do think that's important for people to see. Again, there'll be people in the audience who will say, Derrick, don't you guys know the whole project was co-opted from the beginning? Bitcoin was created in order to lead us to CBDCs. There's people in my audience who, they don't trust Bitcoin. They don't trust any crypto or blockchain. I think they're wrong. Okay. I don't think the evidence shows that, but could you speak to that idea?
Yeah. So I'm a cryptographer. And I study a lot of math. I have to study math all day long. And math is like the language of Mother Nature. It's like literally reality. That's why we use math to describe reality. It's like there's something very deep and spiritual inside of the math. And you're studying math all the time. And there are mathematical truths. And you pick up these mathematical truths and you're like, oh, that's very interesting. And, you gather these and you combine them together, and that's how you make cryptography. And that's like a spell that you've created. And, we are casting these spells that are creating a shield that protects society from the nation state, from attack by states. And we're basically summoning the power of Mother Nature. We're basically doing magic. If magic exists, this is magic. Like using the power of mathematics to literally create sovereign systems, or create, alternative economies, parallel societies that they are not able to attack. There's a saying that we have in cryptocurrency, which is violence cannot solve math problems. That's what this means. It means that there's nothing that they can do to break that spell. The spell is immune to their attack. And, cryptocurrency is private money issued by markets on the internet that travels at the speed of light. Fiat currency is money that is issued by governments that travels at the speed of law. So fundamentally, cryptocurrency is the future, and cryptocurrency will win. It's inevitable, can't be stopped. Now, question is, do you want to be right or do you want to win? And if you want to win, you have to think, what is the future of technology? How can I use that? It's like too simplistic to go, oh, that's bad, that's good. Truth is, there's good and bad in everything. That's the yin and the yang. And cryptocurrency is a technology that has been created by community. It's open source technology. It's created by the people. And it's the best tool that we have to fight the US financial empire, the system of enslavement, to break free of that. And we have to use that power. We have to, that is the free market without the limits. And it allows us to mobilize. But we can't be complacent. We have to be organized. We have to make use of that power. We have to study it. We have to learn how it works. So, for people that are skeptic, I'd say, fine, be a skeptic. That's really good. That's really good to be skeptic about things. But learn how the thing works. Learn, how does Bitcoin work? What is Bitcoin mining? What's it work like? They want you to be weak, the state. It's very convenient, that the main tool is outside of their control, that they psyop people into thinking, oh, it's bad. For example, the left, you've got people going, oh, it's CBDC. You've also got leftists who are going, oh no, it's bad. It's everybody can trade freely. That's free market. That's bad. It's a psyop. It's a psyop meant to keep us weak, meant to keep us from obtaining the power that we can use to liberate ourselves.
Yeah, and sometimes the sort of more left-leaning criticism is like it's bad for the environment. There's so many different ways that people will say these things, and you said something important there as far as actually learning about the technology, because in my experience, the vast majority of people who I see who will come at me for being involved in Monero or just anything related to crypto, they have never opened a wallet. They've never exchanged anything. They don't even know how it works, but they have very strong opinions about it. They just know that it's a setup, that it's controlled by the government. And then obviously what we're talking about here is the very real, the reality that the Bitcoin community has been hijacked and at the very least infiltrated. I mean, you also touched on in the documentary, Gavin Andresen, and he had a CIA visit very early on in Bitcoin's history, and you were critical of that, of course. I mean, there's these different things that start to pop up that show that there were players, some who were willing, like you call Andresen, a normie boomer, which I think was pretty accurate, who just sort of have this vision that if we just get Bitcoin accepted into the mainstream, then everything's going to be great. And then now the more recent sort of, I guess, hijacking that we're seeing is this number go up as long as Bitcoin reaches 100,000 or 1,000,000, then we're all going to, buy Lambos and everything's going to be great. There's no talk about privacy. There's no talk about defeating the Federal Reserve. It's just digital gold. Don't actually use it as a currency. Bitcoin solves everything. Even just the last couple of days before we're recording this, we have Michael Saylor, who's a former CEO of MicroStrategy, who's become, now a kind of a talking head of the Bitcoin community, basically saying those crypto anarchists are, a thing of the past, and people who want to have anonymity and all these sort of things, like just basically shitting on the original concept and idea of of free money, of decentralized private money. Do you think there's any hope for the future of Bitcoin, or have you pretty much like given up and putting your interest into Monero and of course the DarkFi project and other things, or do you think Bitcoin is salvageable in any way?
History, it's not decided like how things can go. It's more like, where can I put my energy to have the biggest effect? And I could spend my time in Bitcoin, trying to, shape its future direction, etc. But it's a huge work, and it's a political work. It's not a technical work. I'm a technologist. I want to create the future of like anonymity. So that's why I'm putting my energy more in Monero and DarkFi and stuff where I think I have the most power, So if people want to do that with Bitcoin, I don't think it's a bad idea. It's just not what I'm doing right now. I really don't have energy to just spend my time, trying to build consensus, argue with people. I'm more like, I want to build the thing, the vision that I have, and I want to build that out. And if people think it's good, they will use it.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's important. We put our energy into what we want to see in the world rather than trying to, try to fight to reform or save the old thing, especially if we already see it's corrupted. Let's talk about that, then the privacy aspect, right? So, besides the co-opting, the hijacking of Bitcoin and mainstreaming of Bitcoin, people buying it through the stock market now, never actually touching it, have no awareness of the original kind of crypto anarchist freedom vision. There still is Monero. There's other projects out there that claim to be privacy based. This still does exist, but also in the last year, we've seen the folks from Tornado Cash arrested, the people from Samurai Wallet, obviously Roger Ver, and different local Monero, which I used a lot in Mexico to go from Monero to pesos when needed, and then doing so without an ID, without any of that stuff, voluntarily shut down after just these arrests taking place. There clearly is an effort by the U.S. government and other Five Eyes nations to start going after privacy projects. If they can't make them illegal, they can at least try to put some fear into people and claim that they're laundering money for terrorists by doing tumblers and swaps and things like that. Do you think that that is going to continue, for one? And also, does this affect the way you guys approach your project in any way, just kind of being aware of what the state's doing?
I think it's a good thing. We're actually, I was on a call with, it was Stanford School of Law, and there was me, and there was another guy from the CFTC, which is a financial regulator in the US. And the guy was giving this entire rhetoric where he was saying, he started by talking about antique collectibles, and he said, crypto is at a fork in the road. On the one side, there's these collectibles, and if cryptocurrency is like these like collectibles, then there's a way that it can coexist with governments. But if cryptocurrency goes this other way into anonymous systems where they're unrestricted and blah blah, then we have a problem. And then crypto will not be allowed to exist. That was his rhetoric. So basically, NFTs, GameFi, SocialFi, collectible, on-chain collectibles, that stuff does not threaten the status quo. And so that stuff is allowed to exist. And the reason why it's allowed to exist is because it doesn't change anything. It's useless. I mean, I don't want to be dogmatic about that. But the founding ethos of Bitcoin in 2010, 2011, you would go on the forums, everybody would be chanting a mantra. And mantras are powerful because people, they're all saying the same thing. They're all focused. The mantra was "end the Fed." That was everybody was saying. It still is the mantra of cryptocurrency: "end the Fed." You know, and we're building a new system. So, you know, the stuff that changes things, you know, anonymous cryptocurrency, they hate that. That's why they're cracking down on it. In fact, the more that they crack down on it, the more it's an indicator of we should do more of that. You know, it's like if you say something I don't like and I start yelling at you and you go, whoa, why is this guy getting so angry? Why is he getting so triggered? It's showing that I'm weak, showing that I don't like what you're saying. And if I wasn't insecure, I wouldn't be getting angry like that. I'd just be like, okay, that's your opinion. You know, maybe I disagree, but, you know, whatever. But if I react, it means that maybe I'm wrong. And that's exactly the situation with the states, why they're being tyrants. Like literally in England, I was reading an article now that they're reducing sentences for prisoners of time served from 80% to 40% to free up capacity in the prisons because of the new speech laws, because they want to put they want to put people in jail for wrong speak. There was literally a guy now who just held up a sign in a protest that said, "Oh, BlackRock MPs, you know, etc. They're all corrupt." Just holding up a sign that said basically that. They've been 3 years in jail. They're literally putting people in jail for wrong speak. They're obviously really weak right now. That's why they're behaving in a tyrannical, authoritarian way. They're shutting people down. So we need to rally together and not yield. And you know, when they lose their power, their legitimacy, that's when they resort to violence. They put people in jail. You know, they inflict harm on people. And they're doing that because they're in the wrong. They know they're in the wrong. They don't feel secure. Their position of power feels unstable. You know, they don't. There's many tools that they can use to crack down on people. You know, they can, you know, have companies shut down. They can like have their bank accounts shut down, etc. There's like many tools or implements that bureaucracies use to oppress people. But when they come out and they make a law explicitly forbidding an action, that's a sign of weakness. It's them taking the mask off and revealing. And it's clear that the thing that they're the most afraid of is anonymous cryptocurrency. That's what they're most afraid of, which means that's what we have to do more of. We have to do that to the max, you know, because they don't want to see that.
Yeah, I'm glad you have that approach, man. And I really appreciate it. Again, like since I'm not a technologist, I look towards people like yourself who are working on those projects. And I do my best to try to let people know who are out there looking for these tools, look to what they're doing, look at these options do exist. And I think it's an important reminder that if these people were what I often call the predator class, were as in control as they want the rest of us to believe, clearly they have a lot of tools at their disposal. But if they did feel completely secure in their positions, I don't think we would be seeing the level of propaganda that we're seeing in the world today. I mentioned to you earlier that I'm visiting family in the US right now, and it's just propaganda like to a max because of the election hysteria. They're going after people. We're in this digital arms race, you know, where people like yourself are trying to create new tools for privacy and encryption, and they're trying to create tools to crack it. And I think that's just sort of par for the course. And, you know, the other thing that I'll mention is that Samuel Konkin III, of the founder of Agorism, he actually wrote about this, and his New Libertarian Manifesto, he kind of describes this, his, idea of 4 phases that humanity would pass through as we went towards, true freedom. And in there, he talked about how as the state did lose both moral support from the people, it would get more violent, more extreme, and continue to lash out. And I think people like Ross, the Samurai Wallet people, those who have been arrested are sort of, I guess they're just kind of victims of the state for the moment as we progress further towards freedom and things get more intense because the state does feel insecure, as you said. And so they start to lash out more and do what they can to their main hope, I think, is just that if they can scare away enough people that, only criminals use Monero, only bad people want privacy, I'm just a normal regular person, so I better stay away from that. Or even if somebody is like, I want my privacy, but I'm afraid to do this because they're going to arrest me, then they can win. They don't even have to make it illegal. They can try to just scare the masses away. So I do appreciate your sentiment that we need to push even harder into these realms. And let's talk more about that. I mean, for me, as an agorist, a voluntarist, a counter-economist, somebody who is trying to really focus on building parallel systems, in my book, I kind of rebranded Konkin's ideas and expanded on them for the modern digital age, and I call it exit and build, exiting from systems, slavery systems, as I call them, and building or supporting those who are building new support systems. So as I said, I can't build the technological tools, but I support and promote the work of yourself and others, having DarkFi represented at some of our events in the past like that, trying to help the masses learn about these tools, and in my other ways, like trying to get off their financial grid. Obviously, that's what Bitcoin was originally about: getting off the dependency for the state and the corporate apparatus for your food, for your healthcare, all these different areas. Trying to encourage people to exit from those systems and focus on the creation of parallel systems. I think that is, to me, the main. I don't like to say it's the only solution, but I do think overall that's the most long-term viable solution if we're thinking of freedom for not just the current moment, but the coming generations, as opposed to putting your faith into politicians or just being apathetic and being blackpilled and saying, we're screwed. They won. The state has won. Focusing on this creation of these alternatives. And one of the ways you are doing that is through the DarkFi project. We've mentioned that a couple times now. So maybe you could share more about the inspiration for DarkFi, what it is, and how it will help people who are concerned about these things.
Yeah, so DarkFi actually was originally called Dark Wallet in 2013, and it comes from James Comey, who is the director of the FBI, and he made this speech where he said that if people start using encryption technologies, it would create what he called the going dark problem. So if everybody went dark, then we'd create these zones in the internet, dark zones, where law enforcement would not be able to go in. So we took that name. We were like, oh yeah, going dark, Dark Wallet. So that's where DarkFi, the name, comes from. What it is in the same way Monero is like an anonymous version of Bitcoin, we're like an anonymous version of Ethereum. So I don't know if people have used Telegram. You've got Telegram, you put it on your phone, you have a chat. You've also got apps in Telegram. You've got a cryptocurrency wallet. You've got et cetera like that. We're like an anonymous version of that. Telegram's not anonymous, but we're building something that's strongly anonymous, allows people the full anonymity to organize on the internet. Like, there is no strong anonymity in any other app right now. And it's strange because we have the tech to make it, but people have been brain damaged. They've lost their imagination with regards to technology, where we were meant to live in the future. Like, literally, if you watch all the movies, they have these cool looking sci-fi interfaces, and yet we're stuck with these crappy, delivery apps or banking apps, and they just don't work, and they look ugly. And people, when I tell people, oh, we're creating truly anonymous, strict anonymity software, and people are like, oh, but how can that work? How can you trust people? Look, in the 90s, everybody was anonymous online. There was no such thing as social media with your names. Everybody had, random nicknames, your joined chat rooms, and that was how the internet got made. That was how we built technology. It was just, we were all anonymous. We were all just, let's build this thing. Let's build something great. And it got made. So it's a psyop where the states and the big corporations have made us believe that we need to have mass surveillance. We need to be doxxed online, otherwise it won't work. They've trapped us into this system, where you've got your banking apps, you've got your, your identity, etc., and everybody is like, under the thumb of, Google and Facebook and Apple. We need to build our own thing because they're keeping people stupid. Like I read recently that Gen Z doesn't know how to use a printer. They don't know what a file system is. Why does that happen? When you use, I've seen people on Apple computers, they open the file browser and it's hidden. You can't access the file system. So it's like by design that it's like, the people that are making these softwares, they're not thinking, how do I make something that's useful for people? How do I make something that allows people to become wealthy, allows people to become powerful, allows communities to build infrastructure? That is not in their economic model. All they're thinking about is, how can I attract many normies as possible? That's why, for example, Twitter, it's not built to be productive. It's built to waste your time. It's literally built, it's got continually showing you pop-ups going, oh, new message. Oh, check this out, new message. Oh, check out this message. It's not meant to help you find the information. It's not meant to help you respond to people efficiently. It's literally using psychological tricks to get you to waste your time in the app. This is the software paradigm because they want to trap as many people into this technology so that they can tax them. So they can harvest their life force, that human resource. So that is a bad paradigm of technology. And unfortunately, everybody is trapped in this paradigm. Everybody, even the cryptocurrency people, which is meant to be the liberation, they're mentally colonized. People are mentally colonized. They're like, oh, the big guys, BlackRock, JP Morgan, oh, they're the powerful ones. We need to be powerful like them. And so they start following behind those guys, trying to copy how they are. We're not going to win by trying to, beat the system at the game that they have invented. Using the rules that they have put down. We need to exit from that, and we need to explore new ground, new territory. Push forwards, and that means we need to build. We need to really not be afraid to push out there and create new things. So we have this concept of. We have two concepts actually: the RegFi DarkFi split, which is that crypto is coming up to a split. It's the same thing as that guy said earlier, that CFTC guy, a fork in the road. And the one side is going to be, the useless part of crypto that doesn't threaten the powers that be, like toys, collectibles, useless stuff, which we call RegFi, and it's fully compliant. It's completely doxed. You have to use your real name. And that never does anything interesting. It's always just like doing what the system allows it to do, psyoping people. The other side of crypto will be the agorist side of crypto, which is the DarkFi side of crypto, which is the innovative side of crypto, which is exploring what crypto is really about, really pushing the boundary there. And, the RegFi side of crypto is fragile. So, the VCs that invest in that, all the big money, as soon as the state cracks down on that, the money exits from that system because it gets afraid and it goes to AI or whatever the new crap is, basically, the new garbage, the new hype. The DarkFi side of crypto, though, as soon as they crack down on that, it validates why it exists. people go, they crack down on it, and people go, holy shit, they're really being authoritarian. They're putting people in jail for free speech, for trading freely. We need DarkFi. And so more liquidity goes into that. And the more it succeeds, the more they crack down. They're like, we need to stop this thing. We need to nip it in the bud. And the more they do that, the more it validates its existence. That's what we call anti-fragile, where it's like a system that the more you shake it, the stronger it gets, the more powerful it gets. This is what we mean by it's an inevitable kind of split that's going to happen, where it's self-reinforced. It's like a feedback loop between nation states, surveillance, and anonymity. We're in a war, basically. We're locked in an arms race. There's no backing out of this now. We have to go full on. The second concept that we have is the dark forest. What that means is that surveillance is a kind of desert ecosystem. A desert is, it reduces everything to being the same. It's monoculture. It's, the sun illuminates the entire space. But we're leaving. The sun is setting on the era of materialism. We're like exiting from that era, and we're going into the era of spiritualism, where people are starting to like really that old paradigm, of like where you have the experts, the trusted information. COVID was a big part of that. Just trust the science.
The technocratic philosophy.
Technocratic, positivistic. That is coming to a close, and the sun is setting. And it was a long and glorious era, but it's like, we're approaching the twilight, and things are becoming more difficult to see. And what is coming after that is the turning of the cycle and the era of a long night, a long darkness. And those of us, and this is what we mean by the dark forest, because the forest, it's like the internet, wild with encryption, and the forest is something that we protect. By protecting the forest, we are part of the forest. We are part of nature. And the more that we protect that, the more that protects us. It gives us cover. It creates spaces where we can preserve our distinct identities. So this is like the dark forest. And this is what I was saying earlier about cryptography and mathematics being the language of Mother Nature. When we are doing cryptography, we are summoning the power of Mother Nature. We are doing a worship of the awesome power of nature, and we're calling on it to protect freedom fighters. Because and the moon is something that exists in the night, and it illuminates the path for those of us that make offering to the moon, and it illuminates the path through the darkness and allows us to mobilize through that. So cryptography, it's something that we tap into, and as technologists, our role is to support the people's movement. To support the people. It's not to as technologists be like, oh, we're the technocratic. We're the big brains. We're going to decide how societies run. No, morality and politics comes from the people, from society. As technologists, we're there to protect the people and to allow them their destiny and to formulate society and for people to self-organize together. But we have a power, which means we have a responsibility to serve. And right now, many of the technologists are selling out their power to states. They're betraying, the power that has been vested into them by nature, by that they have, and they're misusing it. So those of us who have a consciousness and an understanding, we have to push back against that. We have to defend justice. That's like really, really vital.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that well, not only like sort of what the goal of DarkFi is, but also more of a philosophical understanding of the concepts. I think that's important for people to understand as well, that you and your colleagues and people who are thinking like you are not, as you said just a moment ago, trying to just replace the technocrats, the Bill Gates, the Elon Musks, the Zuckerbergs, et cetera, and say, hey, we're the good guys, trust us, we're the new technocrats. Instead, trying to create and are creating new tools which can liberate people and provide them security and privacy when we operate in digital spaces. So I really do appreciate that. And then you also mentioned one other thing that is a big part of my message and something that I believe wholeheartedly. Two things that we can't operate. We can't expect to win by using the same kind of game that they've created and operating in that same playing field. And then also talking about how people have been colonized and their minds have been colonized. This is something I've harped on for years. One of my greatest influences is a Native American activist. His name is John Trudell. He passed away in 2015, and he gave some really epic speeches back in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s. And one of the things he said was that they, this predator class, or he called them the parasite class, that they were not only mining the earth of all of its resources for their goals, but they were also mining our minds and occupying that space in our brains to colonize us in the way that you spoke about. And I think that's so important. And Trudell also said that, specifically speaking to the indigenous people of the US, but I think all over the world, that we can't expect to use the oppressor and the colonizer's tools and beat them at that we have to create new things in order to make that. So I really appreciate that you mentioned those points. And to be a little more concrete, what does it look like in terms of the average person, say somebody hearing this, to be able to use one of the tools from DarkFi, whether it's something similar to Telegram that's more private and anonymous? Do you guys have a timeline for the project going forward, or is it still very early on?
Good question. So I just will explain, what happened with WikiLeaks. So, you were asking earlier, why cryptocurrency? And this is a really good example of the power of cryptocurrency, where they bankrupted WikiLeaks. The US government bankrupted WikiLeaks, and they were basically like, haha, we've done it. WikiLeaks is over. They have no treasury. They cannot fight. So what did we do? We rallied together and we did Assange DAO, and we raised 55 million for Assange's case. And that was what bankrolled Assange's freedom. That's an example of using cryptocurrency. Now, what is a DAO? A DAO is an on-chain organization. So you can do anything, but for example, you have a treasury, and people in that community, they all have tokens, and the tokens are voting rights. And then, somebody can put a proposal up in the DAO, and they can say, oh, I would like to do, this thing, or I'd like to do that. We should fund this thing, or we should fund that thing. And everybody votes on it democratically. And then you decide how that treasury is allocated. Now, we really need that, because, in big markets, individuals have very weak power compared to, large organizations with a big treasury. For example, you can negotiate, cheaper prices when you have a bigger volume. So it's very important to be able to pull capital together collectively to do collective bargaining. Sounds very abstract, but DAOs enable big groups of people to gather, to fundraise, and then decide as a community what they're going to do with that treasury, rather than every person going, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You kind of go with a group of people and you go, I'm going to put my money with this group of people, and the other people are all going to put some money in, and we're all going to get voting rights, and then we're going to decide to do a unified thing together. And that's powerful. That's like a tool in our toolbox. Now, we did the Assange DAO, but there was a big issue with it, which was that it was transparent because it was on Ethereum. And so everybody was doxxed, and everybody was afraid because, the states can see who's voting for what, who's doing what, and they can put people in jail for that. So because of that, we in DarkFi, one of the products that we made was the world's first fully anonymous on-chain token-weighted DAO. It's the only anonymous DAO that exists in the world, and it's on DarkFi. What else do we have in DarkFi? They've been putting cryptocurrency developers in jail because they get their signal chats and they say, "Oh, you said that, and therefore you're liable for that project." So we made the world's most strongest anonymous chat that exists, peer-to-peer, fully decentralized, not controlled by anyone, fully uncensored, sovereign, strongly anonymous chat. We have task manager, we have anonymous payments, trading, swaps, everything that you need to organize. Now in England, they're putting people in jail for wrong speak. So imagine, I'll give a scenario. Imagine an authoritarian government comes to power and is putting your friends in jail, and you need to mobilize, with your community to create a parallel society to break free of that. So what do? You communicate anonymously, using our chat, and you start assigning work to people. You use a task manager, and you form an on-chain DAO, on-chain organization, and you raise money, you raise funds into that. And then you use that to fund people, to pay them salaries, to pay them to do work, and then, people get the money and they need to exchange it for cash. They need to go and they trade it with people, so that's what the DarkFi system is about. It's about giving a home for revolutionaries who want to create parallel society, to enable us to break free of this system. That's what DarkFi is about. And I've been building it since 2013. We've been conceptualizing it for a long time. A lot of research and study and philosophical discussion has gone into, conceptualizing this product.
So is that aspect of it, the messaging, everything you just described there, is that publicly available yet, or is it still being worked on behind the scenes?
No, it's available. If you go on our website, dark.fi, and you go to the documentation, those products, they exist and they're usable. But DarkFi is not done its mainnet release yet. We're coming up to the final testnet, and then after that, it will be the testnet. We run it for a few months, and then we're doing the mainnet release. And then the DarkFi system, the trading and the money and the DAO will be live. But the chat and the task manager and the testnet versions of those products are available now, and they're usable. And I'm also now we started working on a UI. So it will just be an app. It'd be very easy for people to download and install on their phones and just use it.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what most of the people in my audience who are interested in these ideas, who aren't particularly tech savvy, will be looking for. And, again, we had one of your teammates come virtually speak at our event in Mexico a couple years ago. Rose just spoke at our event in Bath about similar ideas. And I'm glad to see that these ideas are getting out there, because people need to understand that there are tools. Because, as you know, people who don't follow the latest updates and trends of everything going on in the cryptography space, they're just using the mainstream apps, and they have no idea that these tools even exist or that they're even being worked on. And we need more people to be aware of this so that these ideas can spread, and so the people who want to use them have the options to use them. So otherwise, what I've seen is, for example, you mentioned COVID. A lot of people who maybe were even I don't trust the government, I don't like these lockdowns, I don't trust the shots, whatever it may be, they still, some of them that I spoke to, ultimately complied with different demands, or they got the shot even though they didn't want to, because they were like, well, I need to make money and I don't have any backup plan, or I need to travel for work and I don't have a backup plan. They're still dependent on those mainstream systems and don't see any, they don't know how to get to the alternative, which is what we're focused on here, building these alternatives. And so that's, to me, why it's so important, because the more we lay the foundation for parallel systems, it gives that person who's still existing, maybe in that kind of mainstream world, but knows they want to get out of it, somewhere to go to, something to work towards and to use these tools as they start to make their exit plan. So, I really appreciate the work and time that you and your team have put into that.
Yeah, it's getting rough out there. Like, I know you were detained in England, but Rose, when she was coming back, she was strip searched in the airport.
Wow.
So it's like, and I can't even enter England. Like, I really wanted to go to that Bath conference, but every time I go to England, they question me for 8 hours. So England's becoming like a dystopia nanny state.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was surprised, but not too surprised to experience that. Well, as we start to wrap up, man, I did want to talk to you for a couple of moments at least about your experience in the Syrian Civil War. There's so many different directions we could go to it, but I have two main questions, and we'll see where that takes us. One, for those who, especially from the Western perspective, if people know anything about the Syrian Civil War, they know that the mainstream media told them for years that Assad is a butcher and that the U.S. needs to go help overthrow him, and also of course the ISIS element. And then they might know a little bit about the Kurds, but not really too much about that situation. So could you sort of set the stage, as before you describe your personal experience, about the different forces that were involved in the civil war, including of course the Syrian government?
Yeah. So as is typical, the Soviets, they had this doctrine that whenever they would tell a lie, it would be like the most effective type of lie was a lie that was half truth. So it's a similar thing with the Syrian Civil War, where, you had, the humanitarian, CIA, United States, government, deep state kind of going, Assad's a butcher. We need to go in and, we need to help the people. Really, they're interested in regime change. They're not interested in Assad being a butcher. Now, I'm not saying Assad is not a dictator. He is a dictator. But the reason why he's a dictator is because Syria is an artificial country that literally cuts across multiple ethnicities, and was something that was created by the British, by France and Britain in the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And this is part of the grievance that even ISIS had, which, if we want to get into ISIS was essentially, the reason ISIS came about was because Americans were taking hardcore Islamists, arming them with weapons, and sending them to Syria to fight the Syrian government to destabilize the regime. So, there's heavy U.S. involvement in Syrian civil war, a political agenda, etc. Now, the Kurds are a faction that have never had any support from anybody. They're literally a nation of people that exists across the Middle East, a huge amount of area, and they've always been. They're in the Bible actually, as like. It says like in the end of days, the Kurds will come like from the mountains and start shooting arrows, and they're these like they're always been this like like Switzerland. They're like people that are in the mountains. They can't be tamed. They like resist like modernization. And so for example, Churchill, he really hated the Kurds, and he was pushing to have them gassed. But in the end, what they did is they split them into 4 countries: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So they split it's literally, if you look at the Kurdish nation on a map, you'll see like a bullseye target, like a cross that goes right through them, because of these nation states that were constructed by Western states to eliminate them as a people. That was like a targeted elimination of the Kurdish people. Now, the Kurds nearly went extinct in the 70s, the 60s, and the 70s. It's like one of the oldest languages in the world. It's Indo-European language, and it nearly they nearly like completely were just assimilated. But then the PKK was in Turkey started as this resistance, nationalistic resistance of the Kurds, and it just grew into this like crazy conflict in the 90s where they were fighting for their own nation state against Turkey, and it just went into this conflict where tens of thousands of people died on both sides, and it was brutal, savage war. And and eventually Öcalan went to prison, and then when he was in prison, he started reading all of these texts, and he like came to this realization, which was that the Middle East is it's a place which is the origin of human civilization, the birthplace of the world's major religions and philosophies. It's a place where for thousands of years, many different ethnic groups and belief systems have been living side by side. But it's only in the last 100 years or so that there's been this problem with ethnic cleansing, with genocide, with fanaticism. Why is that? And the conclusion he came to was that the nation state, which was a political construct that was imported to the Middle East, does not fit the mentality of people in the Middle East. Middle Eastern people, they have many loyalties to their tribe, their family, their religion, their community, etc. And these nation states, like Syria, like Egypt, etc., if you look at their borders, they are straight lines that are just drawn on maps by bureaucrats. And if you look at all the different peoples that inhabit those lands, they're often like the borders just go straight through them. And naturally, the governments that run those nation states, they're very unstable, and so they're very authoritarian. It's the only way you can keep such a divided land together. And they have to be like extremely authoritarian, dictators. And so that's kind of what has like led to these conflicts. People don't realize that in Europe, the nation state as a political construct had literally centuries of eliminating local identity, of local sovereignty. Like in France, 40% of France 100 years ago used to speak a language called Occitan. That was systematically eliminated to have a unified French identity. So people like today now, we're like realizing that we have lost something, and people are like trying to reassert identity. In England, the way that's being done is with like this imperialistic nationalism. But imperialism has been something that was very bad for England, because to have this imperialistic colonial empire, you need a really strong central government. And what that meant was divesting or like the weakening of local sovereignty, like concentrating power in England, in London. And England is no longer an empire, and it will never be an empire. People are still fantasizing about England being this great empire, imagining that if the king and the queen are powerful, if the elites are powerful, that they will share in that glory. Bad news. When the elites are powerful, they just suck the lifeblood of society. You do not benefit. So that kind of nationalistic worship of the state is not something that benefits the people. So we have to differentiate that from patriotism, which is, a love of your land, a love of your culture, your history, etc., a healthy local identity. And we need to recreate systems where people have popular sovereignty, where people have control of their affairs once more. So this is what Öcalan realized about the Middle East, is that the Kurdish people can't be fighting for a nation state, another nation state, like all the other failed nation states in the Middle East. Instead, what the Kurds need to do is they need to join up with all the surrounding peoples and start a new project for a new type of civilization. It's what he calls a democratic civilization, where, we create a new system, like a local system where power flows bottom up, not top down. And so this was the big realization in the PKK. And, I went to the Middle East, I went to Syria, and I learned about this. I learned about the struggle of the PKK, which is not just a political struggle or an ideological struggle or a philosophical struggle. It's a spiritual struggle. It's a struggle to restore back the spirituality to society, because nature, spirituality, philosophy, they are integral parts of human life and human dignity and society, and they are the root that grows into morality and politics. And society does not exist without morality and politics. The state and liberalism is like incessantly trying to attack and break down the morality of society, to break down people being political, to make people nihilist. Because when people have that power, that's when the state becomes weak. The only way that the state can control people is by creating people that are slaves, that have no belief, that are not able to be self-directed and independent. The state does not like a society that is strong. It wants to control society so it can suck the lifeblood out of it, so it can extract wealth. Because the nation state does not create wealth. And the way that it does that is, instead of people being conscious and having an identity and being rooted in their community, it makes people worship the nation state. Whether that is, like blind, nationalism, worshiping the king and the queen, not being, a patriot anymore, or, like worshiping globalism and liberalism. So, I went to Syria, and, I went there with an anarchist kind of mindset. And I learned a very powerful truth, which is that making a revolution is a hard work. It's not like a party, it's not like a music festival. People are like, oh yeah, Burning Man, that's fake. That's not real, political revolution. The way that we change things is we work together. We put our minds together. We think about things. We work hard. We build something. It's constructive, and we change things. And we, as you said, exit from the system. When the Syrian government collapsed, it wasn't that, people randomly took up guns and said, like, oh yeah, let's make a revolution. Woo. No, it was like, there was a force of 20,000 militant revolutionaries who had been in the mountains in Turkey, studying philosophy, fighting the Turkish army for decades. Some of the most smartest people I ever met, the most charismatic people. First time I actually, experienced what auras are, like seeing people that just exude an energy that you're like, wow, these people are really special, like really powerful energy, like people that are extremely calm and peaceful, yet at the same time, when you look in their eyes, you'll see that that person has fire, they're fierce, and they're very smart, they're very spiritually aware, they quote like Nietzsche, and they're quoting philosophers and talking about history. And I was like, wow, I really have to, I really have a lot of work to do. I really have to. And that was why I got into philosophy, and I started studying and reading and educating. The Syrian government imploded. They came into those communities and they said, look, ISIS is coming to attack you. ISIS is going to come here. They're going to rape your family. They're going to take control. It's going to be savage. Here's a gun. And not just here's a gun, but here's how you use it. Here's how you form a unit. Here's how you make a defensive line. This is how you do military tactics, etc. War is not just about shooting guns and running around like crazy. It's about being part of a team, about having a strategy, about being able to mobilize, about being able to defend your land. And they were able to equip people with the knowledge and organize people to be able to defend themselves and to hold their own land against ISIS. And that was the first time that ISIS was defeated in Syria. And not only is war about being on a front line and shooting guns, war is also about having a functioning society. They say war is 90% logistics. Well, you can't have logistics unless you have a society. And there's all the stuff in society like education, law, economy, etc. All of those different branches. Like, what's your society gonna look like in terms of those areas? And this is the problem with anarchists. Anarchists never had a clear conception of the society they're trying to build. It's all really vague. So that was when I saw that, okay, they experienced a new government, a new system of governance being created from scratch. The energy there, people mobilizing, building something. And I realized, okay, if you want to make a revolution, it takes a huge amount of people working together in a systematic, unified way. And you need to have a vision. You need to have a clear idea of what you're creating to go and make that. Not only do you need to have the mind of a creator, the what do you call it, the CEO, tech CEO going, oh yeah, do that, like the boss. No, like a revolution is not just people doing things, it's ideas that people take in. And every religion, every revolutionary movement in history had a book, had a body of teachings that people go and study. They had institutions, like a church or a what do you call it, a temple, where people go there and they study the belief. They talk with the priests and the ideas spread. I'm not saying we need to start wearing robes and quoting scripture, but we do need to think about education and philosophy education, not just yes, it's very important to educate people in skills, but also the philosophical, ideological education, equipping people with the mental concepts to understand and perceive the reality that they live in and understand the work that they're doing. I work with so many tech people that they are very skilled people, but they end up misapplying their skills, working on things that are completely useless because they're lacking the philosophy or the ideology. And so that's really important. And it's like, organizations have a life cycle. Imagine, you and your friends get excited and you band together and you go, guys, let's move, let's mobilize. And you start mobilizing to change things. And, you start to grow. And as you're growing, you're like, okay, now we need to take on more people. We need to take on staff. So you take on workers and you start assigning them work. And, maybe there's a young guy and you're like, oh, he's got potential. Let's bring him up. And, you short circuit him up. But slowly your organization starts to grow. And at some point you start taking on more bureaucracy, and, the organization starts to get bloated. And then the bureaucracy, starts to, people they start out at the bottom and they work there for 5 years, 10 years, and they start to go up and they become a manager. And soon you've got this organization that's bloated. And, then, the people at the bottom start to exit. The people at the top, they've always got options. They bounce to the next new thing. And what are you left? You're left with an organization that's on its way out and, it dies. And that's like the life cycle of organizations, So when we create this organism, this organization, we need to ask ourselves, okay, what is the life? Are we creating something that's long term, will have a long life cycle? Are we going to create something that's just going to grow, and then die? Are we mobilizing, and we start to get a bit bigger? Okay, but now what do we do as we get bigger? Like, how do we scale? How do we become something that's not just 10 people, 100 people? How do we become something that's like 1 million people, 3 million people, much more? That's when it starts to become important to think about structure. Like, what is the structure? And the thing is, the biggest myth of liberalism that we've been taught is that people are born and they just exist, and that they have their own desires, and everybody's an individual, and everybody should just chase their desires, and that's it. And we just build these organizations to mediate conflict between people. People change. People change through participating in public life, participating in movements, being a part of a unified bigger whole. And it's really important to think about what is it that people are taking away by participating in something, and how are we shaping people to be able to participate in things? How are we giving people a character or a personality that enables them to be individuated, to become the best version of themselves? And that's it. If we want to fight globalism and we want to create the new parallel system, the new parallel society, we're going to have to become tough, and we're going to have to become fighters. We're going to have to lift people up, and we're going to have to create, become the best versions of ourselves. And that's something that is really missing from a lot of conversations. And it was the first, I mentioned earlier, being part of the Catalan CIC, which was like the first time that I actually saw this other way of thinking, having come from the anarchist activist movements, where the anarchists are like, I'm an individual, don't tell me what to do, that's authoritarian, to being part of the CIC, which were in Catalonia, Catalan activists who, they were ex-anarchists, they were part of all the anarchist stuff in the 80s and also the 90s, and they said, we're sick of like all the time, mobilizing, for a new protest movement, seeing that come up and seeing that fall apart, and the same cycle repeated over and over again. We want to build something that's big. We want to do something different. And they said, okay, we're going to build an economic network. And in this economic network, our aim is that everybody can join and they can exist outside of the state. You can fulfill your healthcare, your travel, your food, all your basic needs as a human, your housing, through this cooperative network of tens of thousands of people. And it was extremely successful. And I saw at that point the power of groups of people coming together and putting their minds together and trying to formulate a vision of the future and trying to think, how can we build this thing? So this is like the message, if I'm leaving this podcast, I'd like to leave with, is that, okay, the level one is where we start, where we go, this system is corrupt. I don't want any part of it. I want to break free of it. Well done. You've reached a stage one. You're like a great person for doing that. The next stage though is going, we want to win. How can we win? Let's formulate, let's build things together. Let's build organizations and let's recruit people into them and let's train and let's construct stuff, So yeah,
wow,
I'll leave with that.
No, so you said so much good stuff there, and I definitely look forward to having another conversation with you. Obviously, just catching up in person, but on-camera interview where we can go fully deep into that. Because for me personally, the insights that one can gain from a direct experience like that, like you obviously have, are absolutely important. And these are not the kind of lessons that, you see the same thing I see on Twitter. These are not the kind of lessons that the anarchists who just live on the internet are speaking about. Like you said, they're sort of like, you're trying to silence me, you're an authoritarian. There's not a lot of organizational thinking. There's not a lot of forward focus. It's really, as you've seen as well, a lot of the energy is being sucked back into politics. Let's try to vote for a strong man and maybe he'll fix things. Where those of us who are thinking about parallel systems and parallel structures, we do really need some of that, I think, grounding advice and experience to really apply to the way that we build our own movements. And I've always been fascinated with the PKK and with just the whole, reading and about Öcalan being arrested and just, the movement that kind of sprung out from his words. And I think I even read that he was inspired, at least in part, by Murray Bookchin. And, he's got some interesting ideas. Just the way that philosophy and ideas can transfer from country to country, from culture to culture, and be adapted and modified for the specific needs and the specific environment of whatever the local region. I think that's the beautiful thing about us being able to become more interconnected. We know about the problems of globalism, but one of the beautiful things about us being interconnected is somebody like him can inspire you, and then you can inspire more people. I try to do the same thing with my work, and it's always a fun experience and just a powerful experience when somebody tells me they read something I put together or something I shared, and they took the idea and they applied it to their community, and now it's flourishing and it's becoming its own thing. I think that's really how we're going to build these, the next stage of humanity. Really, people can see the direction that the predator class is trying to take things. You will own nothing. You'll be happy. You'll be tracked and traced, all that sort of thing. And we don't have to give into that vision. We don't have to accept that that's the reality. We can put our energy and our time, our money, our support, our livelihood towards, like you said, knowing that we can win, trying to work on being the best versions of ourselves and bringing that to the table right now, rejecting their game and building new systems that can actually respect humanity and liberty and privacy and all these, I think, really quintessential aspects of our existence. So thank you so much for sharing with us everything today, man. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with you in Monerotopia. Again, I'll mention, if anybody hearing this has a chance, come hang out in Mexico City, November 14th to the 17th. The website's monerotopia.com. I'll be there. Amir will be there. I think our mutual friend Sterling Lujan's going to be there, as well as some other Rose O'Leary is going to be there. There's going to be lots of really important and I think interesting conversations happening there, especially for those of you who do understand that technology and specifically cryptocurrency can still be a tool for liberation. Even despite all the crap going on in the Bitcoin world, there still are opportunities for using these tools. So I invite you once again in my audience, those of you who might be concerned, if you've made it this far in the conversation and you're still skeptical about crypto, I invite you to actually get to understand it better. And there's no perfect place, better place to do that than to go to Monerotopia in Mexico City and hang out with us and have these conversations in person. So thank you so much for your time, brother. I really appreciate you. Where's the best place for everybody to follow you or to keep up with your work? Obviously, we'll put the DarkFi website, everything, and anywhere else that they should check you out at?
Yeah, three things. For normies, we have Twitter. I have my Twitter. There's also DarkFi Telegram. There's also the DarkFi chat. So I encourage people to get that set up to join. Every 2 weeks, we have a philosophy discussion. So that's something, people can participate in.
Oh, that's awesome. I look forward to joining that then. Yeah, I highly encourage people. I'll put all those links, the Twitter, of course, for those who are on there, and then the DarkFi chat. I definitely want to join that. And yeah, everybody, I think you heard some really important, valuable insights here. Amir, you have such an interesting story to tell, and I know you're going to continue to do great things. And I feel honored and just grateful to be a colleague, an ally of yours, and consider myself an ally in the work that you do, man, because although I'm not a technologist, as I said, I want to boost the signal and actually use and live these tools as people like yourself build them and help more people realize they're out there. So I know that there are good things ahead. I know the struggle is real, and we will continue to take it head on. We know what we're up against. We know what we need to do, and now is the time. There's never been a more important time for everybody to step up. So thank you to everybody for listening. Check out all the links below. And until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Honor is mine.